Hello everyone and welcome back to Scandinavian Design 101. I'm Sanna.
I'm Andreas and we're two Swedes and we love design.
And today we're finally gonna talk about my absolute favorite designer of all times, the one and only Verner Panton.
Yes.
And I'm gonna tell you why he's my favorite. And the answer is simple, because he's fun. There are three aspects that make him more fun than any other designer. First, he is known for his experimentation with different synthetic materials like plexiglass, rubber foam, and plastic, while most other Danish designers at the time used wood. That's no fun.
No.
Second, he used colors in all kinds of crazy variations and in very new ways. The other ones didn't do that?
No, they didn't. This is something completely different.
Yeah. And third, he came up with new and crazy shapes for his furniture. That's the most important one.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna agree with me. You'll see for yourself later in the video.
Yeah.
Verner Panton was born in Denmark on the island Fyn in 1926. Denmark has over 70 inhabited islands.
Yeah.
Fyn is the third largest. He was born in the small town of Gamtofte, where his father was a wealthy country estate manager and farmer. But the Great Depression hit hard and he lost it all. He started over as an innkeeper, and Verner and his younger brother grew up in different inns. Mm-hmm. One of the inns called Kom igen. Kom again. Det låter väldigt lika. Yeah. It sounds the same.
Yeah.
Would later play an important role in Verner's career. The young Panton initially wanted to become an artist, much like his future mentor Arne Jacobsen. That dream was soon replaced by his architectural studies.
Yeah. And Verner Panton studied architectural engineering at the Odense Technical School between 1944 and 47, and this prepared him for his future experimentation with new methods of production. During his time in Odense, he rented a room and came in contact with the resistance movement. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of the war, the Germans got tipped off about him and ransacked his room. And apparently they found several weapons, so he was really involved in the resistance movement. Panton himself has later said that, "Fortunately, I wasn't there, and of course I had to go underground until the war was over." Yeah. And apparently he stayed at one of his father's friends, who was a farm owner. In 1947, when the war was over, Panton started to study architecture at the Royal Danish Academy of Art in Copenhagen.
Yeah. Two established architects came to have a very big influence in Panton's development, Poul Henningsen and Arne Jacobsen. Mm-hmm. He met Poul Henningsen after he had come in contact with his stepdaughter at a party at the academy, Tove Kemp. After that party, Panton and Tove would come to spend a lot of time together, and after a while, Tove got pregnant. During that time, her stepfather, Poul Henningsen, took a lot of interest in Panton. And the young couple were compelled to get married, and Panton would come to live in the Henningsen family home. Yeah. The relationship was turbulent, and they were soon divorced. And tragically, they lost their son after a few years. But he kept in touch with the Henningsen family, in particular Poul. Poul was one of Denmark's most prominent designers and leading figures in the cultural political debate. And like Panton, he loved to experiment with his designs and materials. So Poul became Panton's mentor and close friend.
Panton's second mentor, Arne Jacobsen, he met for the first time at a dinner at Henningsen's. And Panton had later described that Arne Jacobsen was a very charming and entertaining. He spoke with a flat Copenhagen accent, smoked a cigar, and dressed rather dully. Swedish ready-made clothing, he later told me, and didn't exactly look like Tarzan. Okay.
Who does?
No. And Panton worked for Jakobsen between 1950 and 52, and at the same time he graduated from the Royal Danish Academy. And during this time he was involved in the making of the design classic Ant Chair, and Jakobsen thought it was appropriate for an apprentice to work with design before moving on to architecture. Design was at the time considered a subordinate part of architecture, and Panton have later described, whenever somebody was working on something, he generally started out on his own, and then AJ would come around with his big, fat pencil and a pipe in his mouth, making corrections with his heavy B6 pencil. I can see this in front of me.
Yeah, very describing.
Yeah, and he also said that he learned more from Jakobsen than from anyone else.
Panton spent some time on the road exploring Europe. He did this in his Volkswagen van that was turned into a mobile home with his friend Ove Barfot. Does that mean barefoot?
I think so.
That's very unusual.
Yeah.
Even when he was back in Copenhagen, he lived in this mobile home, parking it close to his friends' homes. These trips resulted in a large network of producers, distributors, and fellow designers that came to be very useful in the years that followed.
Yes. In the mid-50s, Panton's first experimentation with chair designs resulted in his first mass productions. The Bachelor chair and the Tivoli chair were both put in production in 1955 by Fritz Hansen. The Bachelor was constructed of a tubular steel frame and either leather or fabric suspended over the frame. It consisted of 6 components that were easily assembled without tools, and it was delivered in flat packs. We had one, we used to have one, and it was quite... Our chair was... No, and our chair was old, so it was almost impossible to take apart. But it's a clever design. And then the Tivoli chair was commissioned by a restaurant who wanted to have a stackable and lightweight chair. It also consists of a tubular steel frame, but with a back and seat of string. Both chairs drew a lot of attention to Panton, who came to symbolize industrial coolness.
Yeah. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to talk about the Come Again In that I mentioned earlier. His first major design project happened in 1958 with the transformation of the Come Again Inn. One of the inns his father had managed when he was young. He was transforming the very ordinary tavern with a 2-story extension and all-new interior. He designed an open-plan pavilion-like space with a steel and glass construction and sliding doors. The interior design had a color scheme consisting of 5 shades of red, which was very innovative and groundbreaking. The inn came to be known as the Red Ruby. For the restaurant, he designed hanging lamps with the various circular-shaped shades held together by wires, and they were light reflective. That's cool.
Yeah.
He hanged them in rows all over the restaurant over long tables surrounded by the Tivoli chairs. And his new creation, the cone chair. Constructed from a tin plate shaped into a cone covered with foam, rubber, and wool, it was the beginning of a series of chairs. The inn was a huge success and it was overcrowded every Sunday lunch.
After the launch of the inn, a man called Percy von Halling-Koch saw the cone chair and was so impressed he started a new company to produce them, called Pluslinje. A strange name for a company.
Yeah.
Plus line.
Yeah.
And the company came to produce the cone chair and a long range of other furniture, among them the heart chair.
My favorite.
Yeah, it's a great chair. And also the very rare K4 pyramid-looking chair. And soon the wire collection was added, giving the geometrical furniture a lighter expression. And now let's take a closer look at these furniture.
also quickly mention his second total design environment, the Hotel Astoria in Trondheim, Norway. He covered the ceilings, walls, and floor with optical art-inspired patterns in black, whites, and shades of orange and red, which I freaking love.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's one of the best interiors ever made.
Amazing.
I mean, yeah.
He used many of his furniture for pluslinje, for example, the heart cone chair in red and orange, and the padded K1 cone chair. Also, he developed and used the globe-shaped lamp Topan, which was his first industrially made lamp. These two projects of total design let Panton unfold his ideas about colors, systems, and patterns on all levels. He didn't just put furniture in rooms, he designed all surfaces. And that's what's amazing about it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to do, because it's not just about designing a table. You're designing a room, and then you need tables and lamps and chairs, and everything should match in a
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this approach of designing wasn't completely new. It was used, for example, in the 17th and 18th century Baroque and Rococo interiors. But
Yeah.
then there was just a boring
Like white and grey.
period of time.
And now let's talk about perhaps his most iconic piece of furniture, the Panton chair and also the S-chair. In 1967, Panton displayed the first chair ever that was molded in one single piece of plastic. This chair was groundbreaking and helped him to establish his name outside of Denmark. And he was not the first designer to try this, but he was the first one to succeed. He first started by experimenting with a chair made from plywood in one piece, the S-chair. And this chair was designed already in 1956, but put in production by Tonet in 1965. I think it was hard to make a serial production of it. The steam bending technique was something Tonet had developed already in the 19th century. And in the early 60s, he started experimenting with the same sweeping form in a plastic together with the Danish plastic manufacturer Dansk Akrylteknik. The prototype was ready in 1962, but it was not yet ready for mass production. That year, Panton moved to Cannes and later Basel, where he searched for a producer that would be willing to help him with the project. And during his earlier travels, he had come in contact with the furniture manufacturer Willy Fehlbaum, who produced Herman Miller under license, and he was the owner of the company Vitra, we all know about them. The two started a lifelong collaboration and also a friendship. The development of the chair would take more than 5 years to complete. In 1967, a small number of chairs were made from fiberglass reinforced polyester. And the year after, at the furniture fair in Cologne, they were shown to the public for the first time and for the press, and they got much attention. It was a huge sensation, and the project had succeeded, but it was very expensive to produce because it needed to be sanded and lacquered, and also it was really heavy. Later, in 1972, Panton found the ideal material for the chair, now called Panton chair, thermoplastic polystyrene produced by the Bayer chemical concern. The chair was molded in colored plastic granulates and needed no finishing and was therefore much cheaper to produce.
Yeah. When the first chairs were presented to the public in 1967, they were featured in the Danish magazine Mobilia and caused a heated discussion about plagiarism. The two furniture architects Paul Kjærholm and Gunnar Agård Andersson both claimed that the idea for the chair was stolen from them. This intrigue continued for several issues until Mobilia's editor brought it to an end with the conclusion that there's an important difference between making a prototype and bringing something into realization. And I must say that I agree. What do you think?
Yes, I think so. And it was different materials in the chairs, but the shape is similar.
Yeah, but if it's just an idea, it's...
Yeah, I mean...
you can't claim that.
No, I don't think so.
After his move to Basel, he of course stayed in touch with both Paul Henningsen and Arne Jacobsen, and many of his projects were produced by Fritz Hansen and Louis Paulsen. Within only a year in Basel, Panton had established a studio in the city center with 6 employees, and he was also collaborating with manufacturers in Germany and France.
when visiting some friends on Tenerife, he met the wealthy Swedish landowner's daughter Marianne Persson Ortenheim, and they fell in love. Apparently, Marianne had hurt her leg in a Vespa accident and was wearing a cast and had a hard time moving around. Yeah, very convenient. So she had no way up to escape when Panton started charming her. And they stayed together for the rest of his life, and she was a very good match for him. He could sometimes get unmotivated, and when he did, Marianne could help him get back on his feet. She contributed very much to his life and work. Marianne had the role of manager and kept all his appointments in order. The couple traveled a lot in the beginning of their relationship, moving from one manufacturer to another in both the US and Europe. But in 1966, their daughter Karin was born, and they decided to stay put in Basel for the time being.
Yeah, and should we end it there? Is it a long episode?
I think we should end here, and this was the first part of his life.
Yeah,
but we will do...
He's so interesting, I want like 6 episodes about him.
Yeah, because we love Verner Panton.
Yeah, we really do.
And if you love this episode...
please click thumbs up and subscribe.
Yeah, and follow us on Instagram. We're called Scandinavian Design 101.
Yeah, thank you for watching.
Thanks.